This is our last.
All these fish are dead.
No, 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 no!
What happened?
There's so much blood! Trust me.
Shock.
No one's coming for us.
Just keep moving. I finally found the light.
Something's here!
We are almost there. We need to keep moving.
Help me!
Я не понимаю. Мать что, ни с кем не дружила, не общалась? Спасибо, что собрались разделить с нами наше горе. Я У тебя какой размер?
42-й. Тетя Тань, ну...
Ну и как там наша милашка-племяшка?
Да.
Кто из вас девственник помимо меня? Должно быть, что-то стряслось. Не толдычь так громко, раздражает. Эх, сам себя камнем побил. Его должен соблазнить мальчик. Женское пальмовое привидение не появится просто так. Похоже, одно дерево погибло. Эй, челика.
I just need to rest a moment. I think I'm close.
Help me.
Stay close to the light. We are almost there. I can see something up ahead. It's so quiet here.
Help me. Help me.
I can't go on. It's okay. I'm fine. I've seen enough darkness for one day. We're not alone here. Stay close.
I can't breathe!
It's a beautiful day for an adventure.
Did you really think we'd just sit still?
We should begin now.
We need to keep moving.
Are you sure you can walk? Almost there.
Just following the bend in the water.
We're almost there.
We need to keep moving forward.
We're almost there.
Keep your eyes on the path ahead. This is so peaceful.
Stay close. We need to move.
I don't see anything else.
Something is chasing me!
We need to move carefully here.
Did you hear that?
Don't move, we're not alone.
Picture a doorway shaped like a set of teeth. That is the actual physical
I think I'm
thing the
close.
title of this movie refers to before it becomes anything else. A cave mouth in Thailand, ringed with stalactites hanging down and stalagmites rising up, so that from the right angle the entrance looks like a jaw about to close.
Stay close to the light.
Tourists photograph it. Guides walk people through it. And for most of human history,
We are almost
nothing
there.
living inside it could kill you faster than exhaustion or a bad step on wet limestone.
I can
That changes the week before 5 college friends arrive. The Devil's Mouth is built around a simple, almost embarrassingly simple premise. A freak storm floods a freshwater cave system with seawater, and something that should never be able to survive there ends up trapped inside with the very people who came to see the caves as one last adventure before real life begins. The film wants you to ask an obvious question first. How do you get 7 people and a predator out of a maze of flooded tunnels alive? And a quieter, more uncomfortable one underneath it? What happens to a friendship when the person who has always made the decisions is finally, undeniably, wrong? Because that is the real engine of this story. The shark is what the trailer sells. The thing the movie is actually interested in is a friendship between 2 women, one of whom has spent years letting the other one lead, and what gets exposed about both of them when leadership stops being a matter of confidence and starts being a matter of survival. This is a film about a cave with a mouth, and about a young woman named Sarah who spends the whole movie learning to speak up in front of the friend who has always spoken over her. By the end, only one person walks out onto the beach. 2. Entering the story. The setup is deliberately ordinary, almost sitcom ordinary, before it turns into anything else. Sarah McKenna, Max Leviton, James, Adrian, and Greg are college friends on a trip to Thailand. The kind of trip people take specifically because they know it's the last one like this they'll ever have. Graduation is behind them. Jobs, cities, and separate lives are ahead. The vacation is a way of postponing that for a week or 2. Sarah and Max are the emotional core of the group, and the film establishes their dynamic before it establishes anything about the danger to come.
Keep your eyes on the
Max
path ahead.
is the one who leads. She's confident, decisive, used to being listened to, and used to being right often enough that nobody in the friend group has developed much of a habit of questioning her. Sarah is the opposite temperament.
We need to
She
move.
has opinions,
I don't see anything
but she
else.
tends to keep them to herself, or voice them once and then fold when Max pushes back. It isn't that Sarah is weak. It's that the friendship has a shape, worn into place over years, where Max proposes and the group disposes, and Sarah has learned that arguing with Max costs more than it's worth. There's a specific, unglamorous reason this trip matters more to Sarah than the others let on. Her father died recently, and he had visited these same caves years before. The tour isn't just a bucket list adventure for her. It's something closer to a pilgrimage, a way of standing where he once stood. The film doesn't dwell on this. It's not building towards some elaborate ghost story payoff, but it quietly raises the emotional stakes of a trip that otherwise looks like standard issue post-grad tourism. Sarah isn't just here to have fun. She's here to be near something that connects her to her father, and that gives her a reason to want this specific day to go well that none of her friends fully share. Rounding out the group are James, Max's boyfriend, an easygoing presence who mostly follows where the group's energy goes. Adrian, who isn't afraid to get in the water and has strong enough opinions of her own that she occasionally clashes with Max and James. And Greg, Adrian's boyfriend, who has a habit of going along with whatever James wants and, in one of the film's more character-specific details, has an intense fear of blood. A detail that seems like a throwaway character quirk in the film's early, low-stakes stretch and becomes something considerably less funny once people start bleeding. None of this is delivered as biography. You learn who these people are by watching how they behave with each other at dinner, on a boat, in the small friction of a group vacation, not through a scene where someone recites their own backstory.
It's a beautiful day for an adventure.
It matters, too, that the film resists making Max easy to dislike in these opening scenes. She's not written as a mean girl or a manipulator. She's genuinely warm toward her friends, generous in the way people with a lot of natural confidence are often generous. She wants everyone to have a good time. She wants the trip to be memorable. And she believes, sincerely, that the surest way to get there is for someone to take charge and keep the group moving. The film's argument is never that Max is a bad person. It's that a group dynamic built entirely around one person's certainty, no matter how well-meaning that person is, eventually runs into a situation certainty alone can't solve, and that everyone in the group, Sarah most of all, has had a hand in building that dynamic by never testing it. The dinner table scenes early in the film do a lot of this establishing work quietly. When Sarah
We need to
raises
keep
even a
moving
mild
forward.
concern about the boat, about the itinerary, about
We're
anything,
almost there.
the conversation tends to move past her rather than through her. Nobody is rude about it.
Keep
It's
your eyes
simply
on the
that
path
Max
ahead.
or James or the group's collective momentum gets there first, and Sarah has learned not to fight for the extra few seconds it would take to finish making her point. It's an unglamorous, recognizable kind of social
Stay
erosion,
close.
and the
We need
film
to
is
move.
smart to
I
plant
don't
it
see
well
anything
before there's
else.
any danger in the story at all, so that by the time the stakes become
Something
literally
is
life and death,
chasing
the
me!
audience already understands exactly why Sarah struggles to be heard. 3.
We need to move
The
carefully
first
here.
sign something is wrong. Before the caves, there's a boat. The friends are out partying on a yacht, and in the middle of the celebration, Sarah ends up left behind in the water. It happens through carelessness rather than malice.
Don't move, we're
A
not
beer-chugging contest between Max and Greg distracts everyone at exactly the wrong moment, and the boat pulls away without anyone realizing Sarah is still in the
I think I'm
ocean.
close.
While she's out there alone, a swarm of jellyfish gets to her, and she's badly stung before anyone notices she's missing, and the boat turns back for her. It is, structurally, the first time the movie shows you a version of the pattern that will define the rest of the story. Max makes a choice, or fails to make one, and Sarah pays the physical cost of it.
We are
And
almost there.
crucially, Sarah forgives her. Immediately, almost automatically.
See something up
Even though it was Max's inattention that got her left behind, Sarah doesn't hold on to her anger. She absorbs it and moves on, because that is what
So
she has
quiet
always
here.
done in this friendship. That night, something else happens that the film treats almost as a throwaway beat, but which functions as the story's first real piece of foreshadowing. A sea turtle washes up on shore, its lower body torn open by a large, unexplained bite.
It's okay.
Nobody
I'm
in the
fine.
group thinks much of it. It's strange, a little unsettling,
I've
and
seen
then it's
enough
forgotten
darkness
in
for one
favor
day.
of planning the next day's
We're not alone
excursion.
here.
But the audience
Stay
should be
close.
paying closer attention than the characters are. A turtle doesn't wash ashore with a wound like that unless something big enough to cause it is already out there, already hunting,
It's a beautiful day
already
for an
closer
adventure.
to the group's next destination than anyone realizes. The following day, the group decides to book a guided tour
Did you really
through a
think we'd
set of
just sit
underwater
still?
caves the locals call the Devil's Mouth. 4.
We should
The
begin
mystery
now.
takes shape. The tour guide is a local named What, and he is, from his very first scene,
We need to
the
keep
film's
moving.
designated voice of caution. He's experienced, he respects the cave system, and he treats the group's excitement with the patience of someone who has walked plenty of tourists through here before and has seen how quickly overconfidence turns into a problem underground. There's a small, telling detail here.
Just
Guilty about
follow
what happened on the
bend
boat,
in the water.
Max quietly tips What some extra money and asks him to keep a close eye on Sarah during the tour.
We're almost
It's a
there.
gesture that looks protective on the surface, but it's worth sitting with for a second, because it's also Max once again
We
making
need
a
to keep
decision
moving
on Sarah's behalf without really consulting her, arranging for someone else
We're
to
almost
watch out for
there.
her friend instead of simply being more attentive herself. Max's instincts are frequently generous.
Keep your eyes on the
They're
path
just
ahead.
also frequently about control. As the tour moves deeper into the cave system, What walks the group past a section nicknamed Skeleton Cave, where actual human remains are visible, the remnants of a
Stay
village that
close.
was wiped out here
We need to move.
long before
I don't
any of
see
them were
anything
born.
else.
It's the film's clearest, most literal statement of theme,
Something
delivered
is
almost as an
chasing me!
aside. This place has killed people before, on its own terms, with no interest
We need
in
to
how
move
prepared
carefully
or
here.
unprepared visitors happen to be. What's refrained throughout the tour is simple.
Did you hear that?
Have respect for the cave. You are a guest here, not the owner of the place. Max doesn't really absorb this. She treats the tour the way she treats most things, as an experience to be captured and performed rather than something to be careful around. Knocking loose stalactites, carving her initials into the rock, brushing off the environmental warnings
finally
as the kind of thing
found the
tour
light.
guides say to sound official. It's not malicious. It's the same overconfidence that got Sarah left in the ocean, just aimed at a cave instead of a boat. What none of them know yet, what the audience is shown before the characters are, giving us information they don't have, is that a storm the week
just need to
before
rest
flooded
in the
parts of this freshwater cave system with seawater, and that seawater carried something with
I
it
think
that
I'm
has
close.
absolutely no business being trapped in a system like this. A bull shark. 5. What the characters think is happening. For a stretch of the film, the characters are simply on a tour. They believe they are looking at an unusual, slightly eerie natural landmark, guided by a local expert, with the worst possible outcome being someone twisting an ankle on wet rock or getting a little more cave dust in their lungs than they bargained for. The audience, by contrast, has already been shown the wounded turtle and told, through the film's own structure, that something has gone wrong with this ecosystem. That gap between what we know and what the characters believe is the entire mechanism of dread in this section of the movie. Every time someone dips below the surface, every time the camera drifts into open, dark water, we are waiting for a confirmation the characters have no reason to expect.
Okay.
That confirmation doesn't come for the main group first. It comes for someone else.
I've seen enough darkness
A scuba
for one
diver
day.
named Ryan, encountered earlier in the caves and unconnected to the friend group, is the film's first fatality, killed before Sarah, Max, and the others have any idea there's a predator sharing the water with them. It's a classic structural choice.
It's a beautiful day for an adventure.
Establish the threat is real and lethal on someone the audience hasn't invested in yet, so that when it comes for a character we do care about, we already know exactly what's possible. Once evidence of the shark becomes
We should
undeniable,
begin now.
through what's left of Ryan, through blood in water where there shouldn't be blood, Watt's warnings shift from general caution to urgent insistence that they turn back immediately. This is the moment the tour stops being a tour. And it's also the moment the film's real subject starts to surface, because instead of listening and moving with unified purpose, the group starts to argue. 6. The clues hidden in plain sight. Looking back at the film's opening stretch, several details that seemed like ordinary character texture turn out to be carefully placed setup. Greg's fear of blood, introduced almost as a joke early on, becomes a real liability once people start getting hurt. His panic at the sight of Adrienne's bleeding leg isn't just a character beat. It's a moment where the group's ability to function as a team is compromised by something established before anyone knew there'd be a shark involved at all.
The jellyfish incident on the boat isn't only about Sarah's physical pain. It's the first demonstration of the film's central relationship principle. Max acts, the group follows, and Sarah absorbs the consequences without objection.
I don't see anything
Everything
else.
that happens in the caves is an escalation of that same dynamic, just with immeasurably higher stakes. The wounded sea turtle is the most direct piece of foreshadowing the film offers.
We need to move carefully
A
here.
visible wound with an invisible cause, dismissed by characters who have no reason yet to take it seriously. And Watt's repeated insistence on respecting the cave, which plays early on like standard tour guide patter, is quietly setting up the value system the story will ultimately reward. The characters who treat the cave as something to conquer, to photograph, to bend to their own plans, are the ones who don't make it out. The one character who learns to actually listen to the environment, who pays attention to its structure, its instability, its patterns, is the one who survives. None of this is delivered as a twist. It's simply laid down early enough and lightly enough that most of the audience won't clock its full significance until much later, when the shape of the story makes it obvious in hindsight. 7. The story takes a dark turn. The group's first real, irreversible loss comes quickly once the shark makes itself known to them directly. Greg is the first of the 5 friends to die. The shark grabs him by the legs while the group is still near the surface, and rather than simply pulling him under, it drags him repeatedly against the surrounding rocks in front of everyone before finally taking him down into the water. It's a brutal, public death, witnessed rather than merely reported, and it does 2 things narratively. It confirms, in the most visceral way possible, that this is no longer a survival scare by the body count,
for one day.
and it strips away any illusion that careful behavior alone will keep the group safe. Greg didn't do anything uniquely reckless in that moment. He was simply close enough to the water when the shark decided to strike. The group, now down to 4 friends and a guide, ends up stranded together on a narrow rock ledge. And this is where the film's character work becomes explicit rather than implicit. Instead of uniting around a single plan, they start to fracture. Arguments break out over which route offers the best chance of escape. Old resentments that have nothing to do with the shark start bleeding into the conversation. What, the most experienced person present, watches the group dissolve into bickering and eventually makes a decision of his own. He leaves. Rather than continue trying to manage a group that won't listen to him, He decides his own skill gives him a better chance alone than staying attached to people who keep arguing instead of moving. It's a quietly devastating character beat, because what has been right about almost everything since the tour began, and the one thing he can't survive is the group's refusal to act as a group. He doesn't make it far. The shark catches him in a narrow gorge alone, exactly the kind of confined space where his experience can't compensate for the fact that there's no one else there to help. 8. The truth begins to surface.
Keep your eyes on the path ahead.
The group is entirely on its own, and the story's real argument comes into focus. This isn't only a story about surviving a predator. It's a story about what happens to a group of people who lose their most competent member and are left to navigate a crisis, using only the flawed decision-making patterns they walked in with. Adrian's death is the moment this argument becomes impossible to ignore. She's already been injured, her leg cut and bleeding from an earlier scramble across the rocks. And that blood in the water is, quite literally, drawing the shark closer even as the group continues arguing about their route rather than moving with any urgency. While the group is distracted by their own disagreement, Adrian loses her footing on the ledge and slips back into the water. Sarah, Max, and James all reach for her. They are a moment too late. The shark reaches her first. What makes this death land differently than Greg's is the context around it. Greg died in a moment of pure surprise, a shark attack nobody could have anticipated. Adrian dies because the group was too busy fighting with each other to notice she was in danger until it was too late to help her. It's the first time the film makes an implicit accusation explicit. This group's dysfunction is now actively costing lives, not just creating friction. This is also the turning point for Sarah as a character. Up to now, she has operated as Max's follower, someone who defers rather than leads. But watching two friends die, one to the shark directly, one to the group's failure to function as a unit, starts to change something in her. She doesn't become a different person overnight. The shift is gradual, built out of small moments, paying closer attention to the cave structure, noticing details the others miss, starting to weigh decisions instead of simply accepting whoever speaks first or loudest. 9. Everything the protagonist thought was wrong. The clearest illustration of Sarah's old habits, and the clearest sign that they're starting to break, comes through James's death, and through what happens immediately after. Navigating one of the cave's narrower passages, James gets pinned by a rock fall, trapped in a position Sarah and Max can't free him from no matter what they try. There are no air tanks in the system. The group has been swimming and freediving through the caves rather than working with proper equipment, which means James's air is finite and there is no way to extend it. In his final moments, rather than panicking, he tells Max that he loves her and that she needs to keep going without him. He drowns shortly after, and his friends, his girlfriend among them, have no choice but to leave his body behind and continue.
Я не понимаю. Мать что, ни с кем не дружила, не общалась? Спасибо, что собрались разделить с нами наше горе. Я У тебя какой размер?
42-й. Тетя Тань, ну...
Ну и как там наша милашка-племяшка?
Да. Вещи бери только на первое время, купим в Москве.
Ладно, съезжу, посмотрю. Так у нас все говорят, что ты богатая очень.
Социальных программ у нас больше не будет.
I just need to rest a moment.
It's the film's quietest death and,
I think I'm
in
close.
some ways, its most emotionally direct one. There's no predator in the frame. Just water, rock, and time running out. What follows is one of the film's more unusual structural choices, a dream sequence.
Stay close
Sarah
to the light.
imagines a version of events in which, after waiting for the tide to rise high enough to escape, she leaves the cave
We are
without
almost
Max,
there.
walking away while Max begs her not to abandon her, as the shark closes in from behind.
something up ahead.
It's a genuinely uncomfortable sequence, not because of what it shows, but because of what it implies about Sarah's own fear of herself. Some part of her, worn down
So
by years
quiet
of following Max's lead and now watching people die because of decisions she didn't get a real vote in, is capable of imagining leaving her friend to die. Then Sarah wakes up. Max is still beside her in the cave, alive, unaware that Sarah's subconscious
okay.
just rehearsed
I'm
abandoning
fine.
her. This sequence works as both character insight and structural misdirection.
I've seen enough
It
darkness
plants
for one day.
in the audience's mind
We're
the
not alone
possibility
here.
that Sarah might actually do
close.
this by the film's end, that the story is building toward a moment where the follower finally, coldly, chooses herself over the friend who never really let her choose anything.
It's a beautiful day for
Whether
an
the
adventure.
eventual ending validates or subverts that fear is something worth holding on to as the story moves toward its climax.
Did you really think we'd just
Meanwhile,
sit still?
the practical crisis continues. Sarah finds a map that what dropped
We
before
should
he
begin
died,
now.
and using it, she works out an escape route based on the cave's tidal patterns. The first time in the film she takes
need
the
to keep
lead
moving.
on something concrete rather than deferring. Max, true to form, rejects the plan outright and insists on an alternate route through a different set of tunnels instead. And true to the pattern that has defined their entire friendship, the group follows Max. It goes badly. The shark finds them again in
Just
Max's
follow
chosen
the
route,
bend in the
and after
water.
hours of swimming, the survivors resurface in an air pocket only to realize, with a
We're almost
sinking
there.
recognition, that they have gone in a complete circle. They are back in the shark's primary hunting ground,
We need
the
to keep
exact
moving
place
forward.
Sarah's tidal route was designed to avoid. This is the moment Sarah finally
almost
says out
there.
loud what the whole film has been building toward. She confronts Max directly, telling her, in
Keep
plain
your
terms,
eyes on the path
that her
ahead.
arrogance and her insistence on always being the one in charge have gotten their entire group killed. It's not a shouted, cathartic confrontation. It's exhausted, grief-stricken, and true. And
Stay
it's
close.
the first time in the
We
story
need to
that
move.
Sarah has
I
said
don't see
something like
anything
this
else.
to Max's face instead of swallowing it. 10. The final revelation. The revelation in the devil's mouth isn't a hidden identity or a conspiracy. It's
We
something
need to move
quieter
carefully
and, in
here.
its own way, more honest. The confirmation that Max's leadership was never actually more reliable than Sarah's judgment. It just felt that way because Max was louder and more certain, and because the group, including Sarah, had never tested the difference until survival forced the issue. This reframes nearly everything the film has shown up to this point. Max isn't a villain. The film is careful never to present her that way. She's not selfish in the sense of prioritizing herself over the group. Her decisions come from genuine confidence and a real, if misguided, belief that things will work out because they generally have before. But confidence was never the same thing as competence, and the cave is the first environment in Max's life that punishes the gap between those two things immediately and without mercy. Sarah's arc, in retrospect, is really an arc about the difference between deference and trust. For most of the film, Sarah has deferred to Max, not because she trusted Max's judgment specifically, but because deferring was easier than the conflict of disagreeing. What changes by this point in the story isn't that Sarah suddenly becomes more capable. It's that she starts trusting her own read of a situation enough to act on it even when Max pushes back, because the cost of being wrong has stopped being social discomfort and started being someone's life. With this shift now fully in place, the survivors, down to just Sarah and Max,
I've seen enough
decide on a
darkness for
plan.
one day.
Wait for high tide,
We're not alone
when a
here.
route to a high ocean gap
Stay
should become
close.
passable, and make their escape through it. 11. The climax. The climb toward the ocean gap is where the film stages its final, most sustained set piece.
It's a beautiful
As
day
the
for
two
an
women
adventure.
wait for the tide to rise, Max injures her hand badly while scrambling to avoid a near miss from the shark.
Did you really
A
think
detail
we'd
that
just sit
becomes
still?
critical once the actual climb begins, because it means she's trying to pull herself
should
up a
begin
rock
now.
face one-handed while exhausted, injured, and terrified. Sarah ties a rope between them, both as a physical anchor and as a piece of quiet, practical care, an attempt to keep her friend attached to her no matter what happens next. As the tide peaks and the climb begins, the shark circles back and reaches Max before she can get high enough to be safe. It drags her, and because the two are roped together, it drags Sarah along with her, back through the tunnels they had fought so hard to get out of. Sarah is forced to cut the rope.
We're almost there.
This is the moment the film has been quietly building toward since the dream sequence, the literalized version of
We
the
need to
fear
keep
Sarah's
moving forward.
subconscious rehearsed earlier in the story. But it plays completely differently
almost
than
there.
that dream did. This isn't Sarah abandoning Max to save herself out of exhaustion or resentment.
Keep your
It's an
eyes on
act
the
of
path
last
ahead.
resort necessity, made in a moment where staying attached to Max means both of them die instead of one. Max's leg is bitten in the attack, and she's swept away and killed. Sarah survives the immediate assault,
Stay close.
now completely
We need to
alone.
move.
What
I don't see
happens
anything
next is
else.
the film's answer to everything it has spent its runtime establishing about the difference between force and understanding. Sarah remembers what's earlier warnings about how unstable the
We need
cave's
to
rock
move
walls
carefully
really
here.
are. A detail delivered early in the film as one more piece of guide patter, now suddenly the most important information anyone has given her. She realizes she has no realistic chance of simply outswimming the shark. So instead, she turns the environment itself into a weapon. She deliberately cuts her own arm, using the blood to draw the shark's attention, and positions
I think I'm
herself
close.
near a narrow rock pillar deep enough in the system to matter structurally. She lets the shark charge her, again and again, timing her final dodge as closely as possible each time, using her body as bait while the animal repeatedly slams into the pillar. It's a plan that only works because of everything the cave has already shown the audience about its own fragility. The same instability that killed James, that shaped the entire tour, that what warned everyone about from the very beginning. After enough impacts, the walls finally give. The resulting collapse crushes the shark. It's worth pausing on how deliberately the film stages this final confrontation as the inverse of everything that came before it. For most of the runtime, the shark has had every advantage: speed, concealment, and environment it can navigate far more efficiently than any of the human characters trying to escape it.
It's okay.
Every previous death
I'm
has
fine.
come from the group either failing to see the threat coming or failing to move quickly enough once they did.
I've seen
Sarah's
enough
plan
darkness for
flips
one
that
day.
entirely. She doesn't try to
not alone
outswim or outpower the
Stay
shark.
close.
She makes herself the one variable it can predict, bait, deliberately positioned, deliberately bleeding, and lets its own aggression and the cave's own fragility
It's a
do the
beautiful
rest.
day for an adventure.
It's the clearest possible dramatization of the shift the film has been building in her since Greg's death. From someone who reacts
really
to
think
danger
we'd
to
just
someone
sit
who
still?
studies it closely enough to use it against itself. The sequence is also,
We should
by
begin
design,
now.
the most physically dangerous thing Sarah does in the entire film, and the movie doesn't pretend otherwise.
We need to
Her
keep
margin
moving.
for error on each charge is a matter of a second or two, and the film holds on her face and her timing rather than cutting away to abstract the risk. It's a choice that keeps the climax grounded in her specific, exhausted, grieving point of view rather than turning the final showdown into pure spectacle
Just
for its own sake.
follow the bend in the
12.
water.
The ending explained. What definitely happened. By the time the rocks settle, Sarah is
We're
alone.
almost there.
Every other member of the group, Ryan the diver, Greg, Adrian, James, and finally
We need to
Max,
keep moving
has
forward.
died, most of them devoured by the shark, with James the exception,
almost there.
drowned rather than bitten. Sarah kills the shark by luring it into repeatedly striking a structurally
Keep your
unstable
eyes
rock
on the path
formation
ahead.
until the resulting collapse crushes it. In the aftermath, rather than retracing the ocean route she and Max had been trying to reach, she discovers a separate, previously unnoticed passage that leads to land.
Stay close.
She follows
We need
it
to
and
move.
emerges
I don't
alone
see
on the
anything
beach,
else.
the sole survivor of the trip. What the ending suggests. The film positions Sarah's survival as directly earned by the character growth the story has been tracking since
We
Greg's
need to
death.
move carefully
She
here.
survives not because she becomes physically stronger or more aggressive than her friends, but because she becomes the only member of the group who actually absorbs and applies the information what gave everyone at the start. Respect the cave, understand its instability, don't assume you can force your way through it. Max tried to control the cave the same way she controlled the group's decisions, through confidence and momentum. Sarah survives
think I'm
by doing
close.
the opposite, by observing, adapting, and eventually using the cave's own fragility against the threat inside it. There's also a quieter suggestion buried in the final image. Sarah emerging alone, carrying nothing but the experience of what just happened, mirrors the pilgrimage she came on in the first place, a trip partly about her father,
almost there.
about visiting a place he once stood. She doesn't get to share that connection with anyone now. Whatever meaning the caves held for her going in, she's the only one left who will ever be able to describe what they became. What remains ambiguous. The film is less interested in supernatural or mythological ambiguity than in emotional ambiguity. It never explains why this particular shark behaves with the kind of relentless, almost personally motivated aggression it displays throughout. The story is grounded in a plausible enough premise,
okay.
a storm, flooding, a displaced predator, but doesn't attempt to justify the animal's behavior beyond
I've seen
that
enough
setup.
darkness for one
That's
day.
less a deliberately unanswered
alone
mystery than a genre convention the
close.
film doesn't feel obligated to over-explain. The more genuinely open question is emotional. What does Sarah actually carry out of that cave with her? Beyond survival?
It's a beautiful
The
day
film
for an
doesn't give her a
adventure.
closing line of dialogue that neatly resolves her feelings about Max, about her father, about her own complicity in
Did you
years
really
of
think
letting
we'd just
someone
sit
else
still?
make her decisions for her. It ends on the image of her alone on the beach, and
We
lets the
should
audience
begin
sit
now.
with everything that image implies rather than spelling it out. Why the ending matters. The ending matters
We need to
because it
keep moving.
completes the argument the film has been quietly making since the jellyfish scene on the boat. That following someone else's confidence instead of trusting your own judgment has a cost, and that cost doesn't announce itself until the stakes are already unrecoverable. Sarah's survival isn't a triumphant, fist-pumping victory.
Just
It's the
follow
result of
the
a
bend in
friendship
the water.
dynamic being tested to complete destruction, with only one half of it left standing at the end, and that half
Almost there.
only standing because she finally, catastrophically late, learned to stop deferring. 13.
We need
What
to keep
happened to the
moving forward.
characters? Ryan, the scuba diver, is the shark's first
We're
victim,
almost there.
killed before the main group even understands what they're dealing with. His death exists mainly to establish
Keep your
stakes
eyes on the
early
path
and
ahead.
cleanly, on a character the audience hasn't attached to yet. Greg dies first among the friend group, dragged and battered against the rocks in a public, visible attack that ends any illusion that staying near the group
Stay
guarantees
close.
safety. His
We need to
arc,
move.
brief as it
I don't
is,
see anything
is
else.
defined by a habit of following James's lead rather than voicing his own opinions, a smaller scale echo of Sarah's dynamic with Max. What, the guide, is
We need to
arguably
move
the
carefully
film's
here.
moral center. He's right about almost everything, and the one danger his expertise can't protect him from is a group too fractured to follow simple instructions. His decision to go off on his own, rather than stay attached to people who won't stop arguing, gets him killed alone in a narrow gorge, a quiet tragedy for the one character who never stopped trying to help. Adrian dies as a direct consequence of the group's dysfunction rather than pure bad luck. Her bleeding leg draws the shark while everyone is distracted arguing over the route, and she slips into the water a moment before anyone can catch her. Her death is the film's clearest statement that infighting, not just the shark, is actively killing people. James is the exception to the pattern, killed by the cave itself rather than the predator, pinned under rockfall and drowned with no way for Sarah or Max to free him in time. His final words to Max, telling her he loves her and to keep moving, give the film one of its more emotionally direct moments and set up the guilt Max carries into her own death. Max is the film's most complicated figure. Not a villain, but not simply a victim either. A person whose confidence, generosity, and control all come from the same source, and who never gets the chance to fully reckon with the cost of that control before the cave takes her. Her death, bitten and swept away while roped to Sarah, forces the very choice the film's dream sequence rehearsed earlier. Sarah cutting the physical tether between them, this time for real, this time out of necessity rather than resentment. Sarah is the only survivor, and the character the entire story has been quietly building. She begins the film as someone who absorbs consequences without objecting to their cause. She ends it as someone who has learned, at the highest possible cost, to trust her own read of a situation over someone else's
seen enough
confidence,
darkness for one day.
and who kills the shark not through force, but through patience, observation, and a willingness to use the environment's own fragility instead of fighting it head-on. 14. The meaning behind the story. Strip away the shark,
beautiful day
and
for
The
an
Devil's
adventure.
Mouth is a story about codependency dressed up as friendship, about how easily a relationship built on one person
Did you
always
really think
leading
we'd just sit
and the
still?
other always following can be mistaken by both parties for closeness.
We should
Sarah
begin now.
and Max's dynamic isn't presented as abusive or cruel. Max never sets out to hurt Sarah, but the film is careful to show how a pattern like theirs, one person's confidence consistently overriding the other's hesitation, doesn't need cruelty to be dangerous. It just needs enough repetition that nobody in a relationship ever gets the chance to find out what the other person's judgment is actually worth, because it's never been tested without the more dominant partner already in control. The cave forces that test. It's an environment that doesn't care about social dynamics, seniority, or who's usually right. It only cares about who's making accurate decisions in the moment, and it punishes bad ones immediately and permanently. That's what makes it such an effective setting for this particular story. The film needed a crisis extreme enough to finally separate confidence from competence.
Keep your
and
eyes
a
on the
flooded,
path ahead.
unstable, predator-occupied cave system does that about as decisively as a story can. There's a secondary theme running underneath the friendship story, and it's about listening to guides, to warnings, to the physical evidence
close.
right in front of you.
We need to move.
What tells the group
don't
to
see
respect
anything
the
else.
cave almost from the moment they enter it. And that instruction functions on two levels simultaneously, as literal, practical advice about a genuinely dangerous environment, and
We
as a
need to move
broader
carefully
statement about
here.
humility in the face of something bigger and older than your own confidence. The characters who die are, with the arguable exception of James, characters who either ignored that advice outright or were caught in the consequences of someone else ignoring it. The one character who survives is the one who, too late to save anyone else but not too late to save herself, finally starts listening. Grief moves quietly through the
I'm
film as
close.
well, mostly through Sarah's connection to her late father. The trip is framed early on as partly a way of being near a place he once stood, and while the film never turns this into an explicit, spoken aloud motivation for her survival, it's hard not to read her emergence from the cave, alone, marked by what happened, carrying forward from a place her father once walked through safely, as its own kind of quiet echo. She goes in searching for a connection to someone she lost. She comes out having lost almost everyone else instead. There's an argument to be made that this grief thread is the film's most underused idea. The story gestures at it early, gives it just enough weight to register, and then largely lets the shark and the group dynamics take over for the rest of the runtime. A version of this film that lets Sarah's connection to her father surface again in the climax, in what she remembers, in what she's thinking about as she decides to fight rather than keep running, might have given the ending an additional emotional register it doesn't quite reach as written.
For one day.
As it stands, the father backstory functions more as an opening act motivator, explaining why this particular trip matters enough to Sarah for her to go along with it in the first place, than as a thread the film consciously braids into its final act.
It's a beautiful day for an
The film's
adventure.
interest in control extends beyond just Sarah and Max, too. Nearly every relationship in the friend group has some
Did you really
version
think
of
we'd
the
just
same
sit still?
asymmetry. Greg tends to follow James's lead rather than offer his own
We
read on a
should begin
situation.
now.
James, easygoing and low friction by nature, rarely pushes back on anything Max proposes.
keep moving.
Even what, the person with the most actual expertise in a room, spends much of the film being outvoted by a group of tourists who have known the cave for a matter of hours. Seen this way, Sarah and Max's friendship isn't an isolated case study. It's the sharpest, most consequential version of a pattern that runs through the entire group, which is part of why the cave is able to pick them off one after another. A group that consistently defers to confidence over competence is a group that was vulnerable to this kind of environment long before the shark ever showed up. 15. The Devil's Mouth. What does the title mean? Literally, the title refers to the cave's actual entrance, a set of stalactites and stalagmites arranged in a way that resembles rows of teeth around
your
the jaw.
eyes on the path
A
ahead.
striking natural feature the film's own camera lingers on, and one the story is clearly pleased with as an image. It's the kind of detail a tour guide would point out to visitors, and within the world of the film, that's exactly
Stay
what
close.
it is, a
We
scenic
need to
curiosity,
I don't
a
see
name
anything
that
else.
sounds ominous mostly because it's dramatic marketing for a natural landmark, not because anyone genuinely believes it's dangerous. By the film's end, that name has stopped being a
We need to move
curiosity and
carefully here.
started being literal. The cave doesn't just look like a mouth. It functions like something that swallows people who wander carelessly into it and lets almost nothing back out. Symbolically, the title extends naturally to the friendship at the story center.
We're not alone.
Sarah has spent years being, in a sense, swallowed by Max's confidence, her own opinions and instincts consumed by a dynamic where speaking up cost more than staying quiet. The cave doesn't just expose that pattern. It completes it in the most literal way the film's genre allows. Max, the person who always led, doesn't survive, and Sarah, the person who always followed, is the only one who walks out, but only after the mouth has taken almost everyone she came here with. By the time Sarah emerges onto the beach, the title has accumulated a third layer of meaning it didn't carry at the start. It's not just a place. It's not just a metaphor for a toxic dynamic. It's also, now, the specific event that ends that dynamic entirely. The place where the pattern of Max leading and Sarah following finally, permanently, stops. 16. Symbolism and hidden details. A few recurring details deepen the film's themes without the movie ever stopping to explain them outright. Wounds and blood function as a kind of through line. The jellyfish stings on Sarah, the wounded sea turtle, Adrienne's bleeding leg, and finally Sarah's own self-inflicted cut in the climax all connect injury to attention, to being noticed, to drawing something toward you, for better or worse. Early on, blood is something that happens to Sarah and to the world around her without her control. By the end, blood is something she deliberately uses, on her own terms, as a weapon rather than a wound. Ropes and tethers appear at key moments, most explicitly in the final act, where Sarah physically ties herself to Max before the climb. The rope is protective in intent, and, in the moment the shark strikes, briefly becomes the thing that nearly gets Sarah killed alongside her friend. A fairly direct physical representation of the film's whole thesis about connection and codependency. Staying tied to someone else, even out of love, can put you in danger you wouldn't otherwise be in. Cutting that tether, however painful, can be the only way either person survives.
Кто из вас девственник помимо меня? Должно быть, что-то стряслось. Не толдычь так громко, раздражает. Эх, сам себя камнем побил. Его должен соблазнить мальчик. Женское пальмовое привидение не появится просто так. Похоже, одно дерево погибло. Эй, челенька.
Skeleton Cave, the section what walks the group through early in the tour, is the film's bluntest piece of symbolism. A literal graveyard inside the cave system, evidence that this place has claimed lives before and will treat this group's confidence with the same indifference. It's easy to miss on a first watch, buried in the tour guide exposition of the film's calmer opening stretch.
We need to move.
But it's essentially the story announcing its ending before anything has gone wrong. The cave's instability, established as background environmental detail through what's warnings, becomes the mechanism of the shark's death in the climax. This is less a hidden symbol than a piece of efficient, if occasionally convenient, structural foreshadowing. Chekhov's unstable rock wall, planted early, fired at the very end. 17. What works?
Don't move, we're not
The
alone.
film's clearest strength is its character-driven backbone. Casting Kathryn Newton as the more withdrawn, deferential Sarah and Lana Condor as the more dominant.
I think I'm close.
Controlling Max is a choice that reportedly went against both actors' initial instincts about which role fit which of them, and the decision to cast against type gives the friendship real texture. Condor plays Max's confidence as something genuinely likable and well-intentioned rather than cartoonishly overbearing, which makes her flaws land as tragic rather than simply frustrating. Newton, in turn, has to carry a much subtler arc. Sarah's growth is built out of small shifts in body language and decision-making rather than a single big speech, and the film is at its best in the stretches where her transformation is shown rather than stated. The film also understands cause and effect reasonably well for a genre entry like this. Greg's fear of blood, the group's habit of arguing instead of acting decisively, what's early warnings about the cave's structure. These aren't disconnected details. They pay off in sequence as the story escalates, giving the back half of the film a sense of earned consequence rather than random attrition.
One day.
Adrienne's death, in particular, stands out as a genuinely effective sequence, not because of the shark's arrival, but because of the group's failure to notice her slipping until it's too late, which makes her death feel like a consequence of the film's actual thesis,
beautiful day for an
rather
adventure.
than just another kill in a body count. James's death works for similar reasons, but from the opposite emotional direction. There's no argument to have. No decision anyone made wrong in the moment.
We should
Just
begin
rock,
now.
water, and a countdown neither Sarah nor Max can do anything about. The film is smart to let that scene simply be sad rather than trying to wring additional suspense or blame out of it, and his final words to Max land with more weight for arriving without any dramatic score swell or slow motion emphasis. It's the one death in the film that isn't, in some way, an argument about leadership or listening, and the change of rhythm helps. The film's handling of Sarah's transformation also deserves credit for its restraint. It would have been easy to mark her turning point with a single big speech or an obvious, telegraphed moment of empowerment. Instead, the film distributes that growth across several smaller choices. Reading a dropped map, noticing a detail about the tide, holding her ground in an argument a beat longer than she would have earlier in the film, so that by the time she's confronting Max directly, the audience has already watched the change happen in pieces rather than being told about it all at once. 18. What doesn't work? The film's central design, using a shark as an engine for a character study rather than a pure creature feature threat, comes with a real cost. Once the pattern becomes visible, the characters who disrespect the cave die, the ones who listen survive. Deaths are sorted according to how they serve Sarah's arc rather
We
than
need to move
pure
carefully
random
here.
danger. The shark stops functioning as a genuine, unpredictable threat and starts feeling more like a mechanism enforcing the story's argument. That's not a fatal flaw, but it does drain some of the suspense out of the film's middle stretch, where the location is claustrophobic and tense, but rarely surprising. The ending's mechanics are also a point of legitimate criticism. Sarah's plan to kill the shark by luring it into repeatedly ramming an unstable rock pillar is a satisfying capstone to the film's themes about respecting and understanding the cave rather than fighting it. But taken on its own practical terms, it asks the audience to accept a fairly convenient chain of events, that the pillar is exactly where it needs to be, that the shark charges at exactly the right number of times, that Sarah survives multiple near misses at close range. It's the kind of ending that works better as thematic payoff than as a strictly plausible sequence of events, and audiences looking for the latter may find it a stretch even by creature feature standards. There's also a real, if perhaps unavoidable, tension in a film that spends significant energy on a respect the environment message while being, itself, a large-scale production built around staging spectacular destruction inside and around that same environment for entertainment. It's not a flaw that undoes the film, but it's a contradiction worth noticing. Viewers with any real familiarity with marine biology will also find plenty to raise an eyebrow at. Bull sharks are one of the few species capable of tolerating freshwater for extended periods, which gives the film's central premise a thin layer of real-world plausibility it doesn't fully earn by the time the third act arrives. The animal on screen behaves less like an opportunistic predator reacting to an unfamiliar environment and more like a deliberate, almost personally motivated hunter, actively pursuing specific people across multiple encounters in a way real bull shark behavior doesn't really support. The film also asks the audience to accept the shark preying on more or less anything unlucky enough to be nearby, cave bats included, which pushes the animal further from displaced predator making the best of a bad situation, and closer to a generic movie monster wearing a bull shark's face. None of this sinks the film. Creature features have never been science documentaries, and audiences generally know what they're signing up for. But it's a gap between the story's stated realism and its actual execution that's hard not to notice once the shark starts behaving less like an animal and more like a slasher villain with fins. Finally, critical reception on release was mixed to negative, with the film's audience score notably lower than its already middling critical score, suggesting that whatever the movie's character ambitions, a significant portion of the audience that came for a shark thriller found the human drama getting in the way of, rather than enhancing, the genre thrills they were expecting. Some of the film's structural limitations may also trace back to its production history. The project was originally written to be set in Mexico, and the shift to Thailand reportedly happened only about 10 days before filming began, once a studio deal made stages and crew available in Bangkok. The script was adapted to the new location under that kind of time pressure, and a handful of early scenes were shot in real freshwater caves used by local rescue divers, while the bulk of the underwater tunnel work, the script called for something like 13 distinct cave sections, was staged across 2 flooded tanks on sound stages, standing in for the wider system. None of that is visible on screen as a specific flaw you could point to, but it may help explain why the geography of the cave sometimes feels more like a repeating set of similar-looking chambers than a single, coherently mapped location the audience can track scene to scene. A film this dependent on spatial tension, on the audience understanding how far the characters are from safety at any given moment, is more vulnerable than most to that kind of production compromise. 19. Was the twist actually earned? The Devil's Mouth doesn't really traffic in a traditional twist. There's no hidden identity, no reality appending reveal. Its closest equivalent is the dream sequence in the back half of the film, which briefly convinces the audience that Sarah might genuinely abandon Max to save herself, only to reveal it as a dream and then, later, deliver a version of that same moment for real, under circumstances that reframe it entirely. Judged as a piece of structural misdirection, it mostly works. The dream is disturbing specifically because it plants a real possibility in the audience's mind that after everything, Sarah might choose herself in the coldest possible way, without confirming or denying whether the real version of the story will go the same way. When the rope-cutting moment finally does arrive, the film earns the difference.
It's a beautiful
This
day
isn't
for an
Sarah
adventure.
choosing herself out of exhaustion or resentment, the way the dream implied. It's a last resort necessity,
Did you really think we'd
staged
just sit
in a way
still?
that makes clear neither of them would have survived if she hadn't done it. Where the twist is less cleanly earned is in how neatly the film's death order maps onto its thematic argument. Characters who ignore what's warnings or prioritize control over caution die. The one character who learns to listen survives. That's satisfying as a piece of storytelling logic, but it also means attentive viewers can largely predict who's going to make it and roughly why well before the ending arrives, which trades some suspense for thematic coherence. Whether that's a fair trade depends on what you're watching the film for. 20. Rewatch value. A second viewing of The Devil's Mouth recontextualizes several early scenes that play very differently once you know how the story ends.
We need to keep moving
The boat
forward.
scene, where Sarah is left behind and stung by jellyfish, reads on a first watch as a minor complication before the real plot begins. On a rewatch, it's obviously the film's thesis statement in miniature. Max's carelessness, Sarah's automatic forgiveness, the physical cost landing on the person who didn't make the mistake. What's early tour guide dialogue, especially his warnings about the
Stay
cave's
close.
structural instability
We need
and
to
his
move.
insistence on
anything
respect over
else.
conquest, plays like standard genre exposition the first time through. Knowing that his exact warning about unstable walls becomes the mechanism of the shark's death
We need to move
gives
carefully
every one
here.
of his early lines a different weight. The dream sequences, unsurprisingly, the scene most transformed by a second viewing. Watching it again with full knowledge of how the rope cutting actually unfolds makes clear just how carefully the film distinguishes between the two moments. The dream is about resentment and abandonment. The real version is about necessity and grief, a distinction that's much easier to appreciate once you're not busy wondering, the first time, whether the dream is actually the ending in disguise. And Max's decision to secretly pay what to look out for Sarah reads differently on a rewatch too. On a first viewing, it's a small gesture of guilt and care. Looking back from the ending, it's one more example of Max trying to manage an outcome by controlling someone else's behavior rather than simply changing her own. The same instinct, in miniature, that eventually gets her killed. 21. Final verdict. The Devil's Mouth is a shark movie that spends most of its energy on something other than the shark, and whether that works for you will depend heavily on what you walked in wanting. Viewers looking for a lean, unpredictable creature feature may find the film's character focus slows down or over-explains a premise that doesn't strictly need that much emotional architecture. Viewers more interested in the friendship at its center, in watching a codependent dynamic get tested to total destruction, will likely find more to hold on to, particularly in Newton and Condor's performances, which do real work making Sarah and Max's relationship feel lived in rather than purely functional. The film is strongest in its middle stretch, where the group's fracturing under pressure feels genuinely earned, and in specific sequences, Adrienne's death, James's drowning, the dream, that use the location's claustrophobia for character work rather than just spectacle. It's weakest in its climax,
I've seen
which
enough darkness
asks for
for
more
one day.
narrative convenience than its otherwise
alone
grounded
here.
approach has earned, and in a back half that becomes somewhat predictable once its thematic sorting mechanism reveals itself. It is not, by most measures, a great film. Its reception on release reflected
beautiful
that,
day for an adventure.
landing well below a passing grade with critics and considerably lower still with general audiences. But it is a more
you really
thoughtful
think we'd
film
just
than
sit
its marketing
still?
suggested, built around a real, specific idea about confidence, deference, and the cost of never testing which one actually deserves to be in charge. Sarah's journey from the person who gets left in the ocean to the person who walks alone out of a collapsed cave is the most genuinely earned thing in the movie, even if the shark that chases her there is, by the end, doing more thematic work than biological menace. Whether that trade is worth it is, fittingly, a question the film leaves for you to decide, much the way it leaves Sarah alone on that beach, with everything that happened behind her, and no one left to tell her whether she made the right calls, or simply survived the ones she didn't.
We're almost there. We need to keep moving forward.
We're almost there. Keep your eyes on the path ahead.
This is so peaceful.
Stay close. We need to move.
I don't see anything else.
Something is chasing me!
We need to move carefully here.
Did you hear that?
Don't move, we're not alone.
I just need to rest a moment. I think I'm close.
Help me.
Stay close to the light. We are almost there.
I can see something up ahead.
It's so quiet here.
Help me. Help me.
I can't go on.
It's okay. I'm fine.
I've seen enough darkness for one day.
We're not alone here. Stay close.
I can't breathe!
It's a beautiful day for an adventure.
Did you really think we'd just sit still?
We should begin now.
We need to keep moving.
Are you sure you can walk? Almost there.